So after releasing The Fragile in 1999, Nine Inch Nails toured it. They played all around the world on the Fragility V1 and V2 tours, and all the while Trent Reznor was sinking deeper and deeper into his drug and alcohol usage. Once the tours had concluded and they had gotten home, in 2001 Trent Reznor got clean. Then in January 2002, they put out a live disc / bonus acoustic CD. And so today that's what we'll be talking about, live and all that could have been, and more notably still. Technically, this double disc package is the first Nine Inch Nails release wherein Trent Reznor released it when sober, but I don't know if he was sober while playing any of these songs, and so as a result, it's not really thought of that way. As I discussed on my Fragile video, drug and alcohol addiction was a very serious problem for Trent Reznor, and getting clean is an entire story in and of itself. I will be talking about that more on my With Teeth video. But before we move on to that major release, I just wanted to touch on this live record and its acoustic disc. This video, more than anything else, will be about Still, but I will still ironically talk about the live record, which we will begin with now. Live and All That Could Have Been is a very good live album. It's recordings of songs from the Fragility tour dates, and so as a result, The Fragile is pretty heavily represented in this track listing, but you also get some songs from The Downward Spiral, Broken, and Pretty Hate Machine. This record sounds way better than just about any other live record out there, and the story behind it basically is just that Trent Reznor and company produced it and worked on it like an actual album. They were really proud of the show that they put on, and so as a result, they wanted a disc that properly encapsulated it. And so the final result is just a really energetic, powerful live recording. As a result of the band being intimately familiar with many of these songs and having played them across many tours, some of these songs get a huge boost compared to their studio recordings. Head Like a Hole, for instance, is a lot more pissed off and angry sounding than the original track. Same goes for Terrible Lie, same goes for Sin, same goes for Wish and Gave Up off of the Broken album. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I prefer these live recordings of these songs compared to the original studio records. I just think they have a very palpable energy to them, and I think they're just really freaking strong recordings. Trent Reznor is a great vocalist, but this recording features him in his prime. The man at this point in time is 60 years old, and so as a result, he's not able to scream like he once did, but on this record, he screams quite a freaking bit. Some of the songs have different arrangements than their studio recordings. You see that on older tracks, and you even see that on newer tracks. So for instance, The Day the World Went Away on the original Fragile album does not have drums. In the live recording, it does. Star Effers Incorporated is a very different take on the song because it ditches all the electronic vocal modulations. Piggy and Closer, I think, really benefit a lot from the live atmosphere that they have going for them. March of the Pigs has an extra section added to it, and seeing as how Nine Inch Nails does not have a greatest hits record, this is probably the closest thing to it. Admittedly, as someone who loves The Fragile, I do think the Fragile tracks are the weakest on the record, but I still think this is a really great live recording. It has me wanting more live recordings from the more recent band performances, and even though a live album isn't quite the same as seeing Nine Inch Nails live, I think it's still worth listening to and checking out. Then we get to the second disc of the package, which is Still, which is the reason I'm making this video. Still is freaking phenomenal. It is the best Nine Inch Nails record that only Nine Inch Nails fans know about. If you are a hardcore Nine Inch Nails fan, then you probably already know this album, but if you're just more of a casual listener, you've probably never heard of this. And the reason why is because it's disc 2 to a freaking live record. Because I do think that Still is a more valuable piece of music than the live album. Again, like I just finished talking about, I really appreciate the live record, I really like it, but I do think that Still manages to take a lot of older tracks, and it manages to take a lot of newer tracks, and it manages to marry them together into a very wonderful package. Still is the closest thing that Nine Inch Nails has to an unplugged acoustic record. It's not the same as MTV Unplugged's Nirvana or any of those performances. It's not the same as the Queens of the Stone Age Live in the Catacombs record, which I really love, but rather what it is it's half old stuff that's been reimagined and reworked, and then it's half new stuff. So you get performances of Something I Can Never Have off of Pretty Hate Machine, The Becoming off of The Downward Spiral, and The Fragile and The Day the World Went Away off of The Fragile. Something I Can Never Have is already stripped down in its original form, but it is even more stripped down and raw sounding here. The Fragile and The Day the World Went Away lose their more aggressive guitar sounds, and they become much more delicate pieces. And this version of The Becoming freaking slaps. It is my favorite version of The Becoming, because The Becoming, if you remember, is a piece off The Downward Spiral that is aggressive and pissed off and has screaming sounds in the background. And here it's still aggressive and it's pissed off, even though there's just like a piano and an acoustic guitar and like a crappy drum machine, honestly. Because the drum machine on the song, the samples just sound like kind of cheesy at this point in time, but I think that's probably just because we're 25 years removed away from this release. But I think that because of the fact that it loses all the super high production that the original Becoming has off the Downward Spiral, I think it's really able to illuminate the songwriting and just make it into a much more unique piece that stands out on this record on Still. I think the reason why the Becoming works for me on this album is because it's not an obvious choice to rework as an acoustic track. This album is actually semi-influenced by a live set that they did for a Chicago, I believe, radio station. That performance was 3 unplugged songs and 3 more aggressive electronic songs. So one song that they did during that session that is not on Still is Hurt, and it's an acoustic mix of Hurt that predates the Johnny Cash version, and so as a result it's actually really interesting to hear. But they easily could have put that version of Hurt onto this record, but they didn't. They did the Becoming. Even though it loses a lot of the industrial machinery sound effects, and even though it loses most of the electronics, I think the Becoming is still just a deeply, deeply angry, pissed off, and hurting sort of piece. I think Trent Reznor's vocals on this, and really in both discs, I think they really shine because they're in the forefront here. I don't know if people appreciate how good of a vocalist Trent Reznor was and how good he is, but I do think that for the people who are questioning, hey, why did Nine Inch Nails blow up in popularity? Because they weren't the first industrial band, so why didn't Skinny Puppy or Ministry? I think Still makes a very good case for why Nine Inch Nails blew up. In short, Trent Reznor's voice is just so layered with emotion, and he's able to convey such pain and such agony and such hurt and such anger. He is able to emote as good as just about any other vocalist I can think of. I do think that because of the fact that the album is so stripped down, because it features such stripped down tracks, I think because of this, the vocals especially shine all the more. Also featured on the album are 4 new instrumentals: Gone Still, The Persistence of Loss, Adrift and at Peace, and my favorite, Leaving Hope. The story goes that Trent Reznor was hired to score a movie, 1 Hour Photo, but that fell through because the studio didn't like Trent Reznor because he was a rock star, so they wanted a more established film composer. And so the 4 instrumental pieces on this are ones that evolved from songs that were written for that soundtrack. They aren't necessarily the original versions that were going to show up in the movie, but they evolved from sketches and songs that were written for that movie. Trent Reznor has said that Adrift and at Peace is the conclusion to Lemur, and it's unclear to me if that means that it was written during the Fragile sessions or if it was written afterwards with Lemur in mind, but I do think it and the 3 other instrumentals just do a tremendous job of capturing serenity, but also there's a bit of anxiety in them. They're mostly peaceful tracks, but at the same time, whenever I listen to any of them, I get emotional. They make me sad and regretful, and I think that's because of all the songs involving lyrics on this record. Because there are 9 songs on the album, there's 5 songs with lyrics and then 4 instrumentals, and the 2 sets of songs are more or less interwoven. Really, these tracks are mostly piano songs. You do have synths, and I think there's a bit of guitar on them, but they are just these really delicate, beautiful instrumentals. And so I really do think that if you are a fan of The Fragile and you haven't heard this album, you need to listen to it. And now we are saving the best for last, because there is a brand new song that has lyrics on this record, and All That Could Have Been. It is my favorite song of all time. Like, full stop. It's my favorite Nine Inch Nails song. It is my favorite any song. It's a song that's very beautiful, and I think it deals with the pain of regret, as do the other 4 tracks with vocals on this record. That is kind of the connective tissue of every song on here, I think, is that it deals with regret. The more I listen to it, the more it becomes clear why exactly he chose Something I Can Never Have to be on this record. Because in that song, he sings about a fading memory of who he used to be. In The Fragile, he sings about how I was there too, I was like you, I believe are the lyrics. So you certainly get a sense of past versus present, and you get the same thing with the Becoming. In that song, he sings about becoming a machine and turning into one, but at the same time, he's still singing about a past relationship, Annie, hold a little tighter. And then, as I talked about in my Fragile video, with The Day the World Went Away, I interpret the song as being about oblivion and wishing that things were different. And so I think all of these songs are about pain and regret, and I think that And All That Could Have Been fits in there very nicely. It's unclear to me if this song was written during the Fragile recordings or if it was written afterwards. I can't seem to find anything that confirms it one way or another, but either way, I do think it would absolutely fit in with the rest of the Fragile. This song to me has always sounded like snow. It's always sounded like winter. And in this first verse, you get some of that snow imagery that you see towards the end of the Fragile with I'm looking forward to joining you finally. Breeze still carries the sound, maybe I'll disappear. Tracks will fade in the snow, you won't find me here. Breeze still carries the sound, reminds me a lot of I'm looking forward to joining you finally with the smell of sunshine. It also reminds me of Please with the lyric echoing the sound, which is the name of a Nine Inch Nails form. This first verse to me seems to be about running away from someone or something and trying to hide in a place where they will never find you again. Ice is starting to form, ending what had begun. I am locked in my head with what I've done. The idea of being locked in your own head appears on the Fragile, but it is a theme that is gone into much more on With with teeth, so we'll be discussing that next video. I know you tried to rescue me, didn't let anyone get in, left with the trace of all that was and all that could have been. It reminds me of The Fragile, the song. It's kind of the flip side of that because that song sings, I won't let you fall apart, and it repeats that line. But then here you have the idea, I know you tried to rescue me, didn't let anyone get in. And to me it seems to be about like accepting death or accepting oblivion, accepting that things will be gone just because of those first lines. Ice is starting to form, ending what had begun. Because I do think as you get older, I think more and more of life kind of falls into place whether or not you want it to. And that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Because as you get older, ideally you achieve more security, but the twist that comes with security is that you limit your freedom, you limit your possibility. And so the idea ending what had begun is just really sad because endings are always sad. Endings always suck because of the fact that if something bad happens and that's why something ends, that sucks to have to deal with. But then if something is good and good all the way to the end, then it's a shame that it couldn't continue. And so in any situation, endings are always going to be difficult. But the idea left with a trace of all that was and all that could have been is just so heartbreaking to me. I spend a lot of time thinking about this just in my own life. There are a lot of situations and things that I reflect on, and certainly I live too much inside my own head. I'm fortunate enough to not have any like major regrets or anything. Like all in all, I think my life has turned out decently, but at the end of the day, there's still that like question where it's like, you know, you never know if you've made the right decision. And so I think that's why I love this song. Just the idea and all that could have been is it's so terrible. It's such a tragic idea because no matter what, no matter if things are good or if they're bad, you're still left wondering. You don't know how things would have turned out if you had acted differently or if someone else had acted differently. It's just always so crushing to look upon potential and then to not see it realized. This song to me has some like industrial noises and it's always sounded like ice breaking, which I think is intentional. It's just a very wintry, beautiful song. The chorus reads, please take this and run far away from me. I am tainted. The two of us were never meant to be. I am tainted, I think, is a pretty typical Nine Inch Nails lyric. The two of us were never meant to be seems to be a twist on we're in this together. And really, I think that's not a bad way of thinking about this song. It's like an anti-we're in this together. The two of us were never meant to be. All these pieces and promises and left behinds. If only I could see in my nothing, you meant everything, everything to me. And I feel like these lyrics are probably about self-sabotage. That's what it reads like to me. Because it almost reads like the narrator is giving all these reasons for why he is tainted and why he's bad, you know, and why you should leave him alone. I know you tried to rescue me, didn't let anyone get in. Run far away from me. I am tainted. The two of us were never meant to be. Because it seems to me like whoever the narrator is addressing wanted to be with the narrator, but then the narrator declares, in my nothing, you meant everything to me. I think people have a really difficult time being loved, and so that's just a really tragic and painful idea. There's one more verse. Gone, fading, everything, and all that could have been, could have been. And then the chorus repeats itself, and basically from there you have and all that could have been, which is a very beautiful song. And so this is a track that really means a lot to me, and it makes me really sad, because it's kind of an ode to things that have been lost. Because I think no matter what, no matter how good things are, or no matter how they play out, I think people are always going to sort of question it. They'll always question if they made the right decision. And I think this goes back to some of the Fragile ideas. You always want more, or you always want something different. It kind of reminds me of Even Deeper, with the idea that in a dream I'm a perfect me and you're a perfect you and we fit perfectly. For once in my life I feel complete, but I still want to ruin it. As I'm saying, I think it really goes back to that idea of self-sabotage, and don't do that. Don't sabotage yourself, because I think there are a lot of people out there who think that they deserve less than they actually do. I think you, whoever you are, I think you deserve to be happy. I think you deserve to have a good life. And I think a lot of people really struggle with that. And as we sort of talked about on the Fragile, on the song in my Fragile video, as we talked about, I think a lot of the time it is easier to want something good for someone else than it is to want something good for yourself. But again, I'll go ahead and say it. You deserve good things, viewer, person, random person. And so don't beat yourself up too hard, or don't self-sabotage, and try to communicate and do good things and be a good person, I guess. To wrap up, this is an album still specifically that means a lot to me. As I said before, I think it is Nine Inch Nails' secret best album. I think it's especially a wonderful record because of the fact that it really helps to showcase Trent Reznor's talents, because everyone knows he's a great musician, but I do think it takes a lot of courage to put together an acoustic disc like this, because Nine Inch Nails, of course, are known for their like weird industrial sounds, and the Downward Spiral is a crazy album that just, it sounds insane. And so you take away those electronics, you take away all the industrial machinery sounds and all of the samples and and whatever. You take away a lot of the electronic stuff, and what are you left with? You're left with an extremely talented songwriter and band. And so this is what I have. If you haven't heard this album before, please check out Still. Again, the live record's good. Still is the best though. So thank you for watching. Have a nice night, and I will see you next time we talk about Nine Inch Nails, where we will discuss With Teeth. So thank you. Goodbye.